Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, who gets to decide what's right and wrong? Most people live their entire lives following rules that were never theirs to begin with. Rules that tell you ambition is selfish, that wanting more out of life makes you greedy, that desiring power makes you evil. But have you ever wondered who came up with those ideas? It wasn't some divine truth. It wasn't nature. It was people. And more importantly, it was the people already at the top. See, what we call morality is often just a system of control, a way to keep the powerful from being challenged and the weak from rising. Nietzsche saw through this illusion. He believed that traditional morality wasn't about justice or virtue. It was about manipulation. He called it slave morality. Slave morality teaches that submission is a virtue, that obedience makes you noble, that suffering without complaint makes you strong. But who benefits from these beliefs? Not you, not the ones who follow them. The ones who benefit are the ones who wrote the rules. For centuries, religious leaders told people that humility is the highest virtue, that you should sacrifice your desires, that if you suffer quietly, you'll be rewarded, eventually. Meanwhile, they lived in comfort, preached obedience, and controlled millions of minds. Governments do the same thing. They talk about equality and fairness, but when you look closer, they bend the laws to stay in power, to protect their interests. What they call justice is just another tool in their arsenal. Now, Nietzsche didn't just complain about this. He offered an alternative, what he called master morality. Master morality isn't about obedience, it's about creation. It's the mindset of the builders, the innovators, the ones who shape the world instead of being shaped by it. To someone who lives by this code, ambition isn't a flaw, it's fuel. The desire to grow, to lead, to rise. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's life at its most raw and real. The people who embrace this don't live to make others comfortable. They live to become powerful, not to dominate others out of cruelty, but to express the full force of who they are. Now think about it. Who changed the course of history? Was it the ones who followed every rule, or the ones who broke them? Julius Caesar didn't let the Roman Senate define his limits. He shattered them and claimed power. Napoleon wasn't content being just another officer. He rewrote the map of Europe. Even in the modern world, Steve Jobs didn't accept the idea that tech should play it safe. He redefined everything by imposing his vision. These weren't men who bowed to society's expectations. They were men who reshaped the world around them. But here's the trap most people fall into. When you're raised inside a system built on slave morality, you don't even realize how much it's holding you back. You feel guilty for wanting more. You hesitate to stand out. You're afraid to be seen as arrogant or too ambitious, because your whole life you've been told that being good means playing small, staying quiet, and not making waves. Nietzsche called this a kind of sickness, a disease of the spirit. He believed that human beings are meant to evolve, to grow beyond the limits that others impose, not by hurting others, but by refusing to be caged by false morality. And one of the biggest reasons most people never gain real power? They don't control themselves. They let emotions drive them. They react to every insult. They argue with every critic. They cling to romantic ideals of how the world should be and ignore how it really works. But here's the truth. The people who win in the real world are not necessarily the smartest or the most ethical. They're the most strategic. The people who rise to the top know when to act, and more importantly, when not to. While others are shouting to prove themselves, they stay quiet and observe. While others waste energy on pointless battles, they conserve theirs for the moments that matter. Real strength isn't about reacting to every provocation. It's about restraint. It's about control. Because when you can control yourself, you can control the game. Take Julius Caesar again. He didn't rise by arguing with his critics. He let his victories speak for themselves. When he was attacked politically, he didn't lash out. He waited, built alliances, and when the moment was right, he struck decisively. Same with modern power players. The CEOs who dominate industries, it's not because they work harder than everyone else. It's because they understand human behavior. They know when to strike and when to stay silent. They move with intent. The most powerful people don't go around saying, "I'm powerful." They don't need to. You feel it. That's the kind of mastery Nietzsche was pointing toward. Not just domination, but self-mastery. Because once you stop being controlled by your emotions, you stop being predictable. You stop being easy to manipulate. And that's when power starts to shift into your hands. But here's where it gets interesting. Even those who master power can fall hard. The same qualities that lift them up often become their downfall. And that's where we're headed next. If power were only about being bold and ruthless, then staying at the top would be easy. But history tells a different story, one of brilliant rises followed by brutal falls. Take Julius Caesar. He conquered Rome with charisma, strategy, and sheer force of will. But the very Senate he once outmaneuvered eventually turned on him. He was stabbed by those closest to him, people he trusted. Why? Because his hunger for power created too many enemies. He didn't know when to stop. Same with Napoleon. He took Europe by storm, reshaping nations through his military genius. But he couldn't see the line between bold and reckless. He pushed too far, invading Russia, ignoring every warning. His downfall wasn't sudden, it was inevitable. His ambition became his blind spot. And this isn't just ancient history. Look at modern business. Jeff Skilling of Enron, once seen as unstoppable, visionary. He manipulated markets, played the power game with precision, until it all unraveled and he ended up in prison. Elizabeth Holmes built Theranos on the promise of revolutionizing medicine. But her obsession with image and control led her to fake results, lie to investors, and ultimately destroy her company and her credibility. So what went wrong? Nietzsche would say it's the illusion of invincibility. When people believe they're untouchable, they lose sight of reality. They stop listening, stop learning, and start making mistakes they never would have made before. Their power blinds them. They forget a key truth. Strength without wisdom is a ticking time bomb. But there is a way to rise and stay there. The real masters of power aren't just fierce, they're balanced. They know when to dominate and when to hold back. They know when to destroy a threat and when to turn it into an opportunity. They don't let arrogance drive them. They stay sharp, aware, strategic. Because the ones who fall are those who confuse power with permanence. They think winning once means they'll keep winning forever. But power isn't permanent. It has to be maintained. And that's the ultimate lesson. The world doesn't reward virtue. It rewards vision, discipline, strategy. But does that mean you have to become a ruthless tyrant? That you have to throw away all morality to succeed? And this is where most people get it wrong. Nietzsche never said you must destroy others to rise. He didn't preach chaos or cruelty. He saw power as a tool, not a weapon. A way to shape your life with intention, not a reason to become a monster. The true master of power is someone who understands the game, but doesn't get consumed by it. Because here's the final choice. You can keep believing in a comforting illusion, or you can see the truth and learn to play the real game on your terms. Power isn't given, it's taken. And if you've made it this far, maybe you're ready to take it.